Hidden inside every one of us is a structure essential to our life. Yet when glimpsed, it can fill us with deep fear. The skeleton. As varied in shape and size as all the creatures across the face of the earth. Fish, birds, amphibians, reptiles and mammals all have what we commonly think of as a skeleton, an internal framework of bones on which the soft body hangs, the endoskeleton. The skeleton supports the body, anchors the muscles, and forms a hard shield for the vital organs. It permits movement, feeding, procreation, life itself. An elephant's thigh bone is 100 times bigger than a vole's. Yet both, like mole and monkey, hedgehog and horse, share the same design of bones. The spine, rigid yet able to bend dramatically, supports the entire body. From the limbs, which give thrust for movement, to the cage of ribs protecting the heart and lungs, to the skull, casing for the brain and the vital senses. It's a design which includes what is to us the most interesting skeleton of all, our own. The human skeleton starts life with over 300 bones in a baby that slowly fuse into the 206 bones of the adult man or woman. A body that can grow to almost 3 meters, so tall that an ordinary table is at knee height, or remain so stunted it could ride a spaniel as a horse, and with a skull which guards the only brain capable of studying itself. The skeleton, foundation of the living body. And image of its death. It's a cause for mockery. As Winston Churchill said of a rather gaunt rival, "I've seen better looking faces on a pirate flag." The skull and crossbones, the emblem of danger, from pirate flags to poison bottles. But occasionally this set of rattling bones is an invitation to the carnival, to come and laugh at death, a symbol of freedom from earthly cares. And birds enjoy the freedom of the skies precisely because of the way their bones are made. They're almost hollow. Some even contain air sacs as extensions of the lungs. Light as a feather. Almost. Every creature on Earth reveals its style of movement in its skeleton. The enormous thrust needed to help a bird take off and fly comes from its chest, a breastbone with a huge keel to anchor the powerful wing muscles. Whereas in land animals, the whole thrust of movement is different. It comes from the rear, and it's the hips and pelvis connected to the spine which transmit the thrust from the hind legs through the entire body. This is true whether the action is running at great speed, leaping across rivers, bounding for long distances, or just dealing with an inconvenience. Yet what about fish who have no legs or wings? Here a flick of the tail pushes the water away and back, driving the fish forward. And since they carry no weight, fish bones are light. And sometimes they're not bones at all. Sharks, rays and dogfish have cartilage instead, flexible but hard. For animals which do have hind legs, the tools on the end of them can have a multitude of uses. They can kick out as weapons, or kick water like paddles. They can grip like pincers, hook a fish clean out of water, or in the case of the ibex, find footholds on almost vertical rock. They can be flat shoes that will carry the animal at great speed. Or like the caribous, be cloven, divide into two halves that splay out and spread the weight like snowshoes. Some animals can stand on their hind limbs, if only for a few moments. For humans, this posture is a way of life. We have a spine originally designed for an animal that travelled on all fours. By standing upright, our spine has modified to an S shape, so the body is balanced over the legs and feet and the weight carried on the thigh and the shin, the largest and strongest bones in the body. Powerful and resilient. Moving on the hind legs alone requires a highly tuned sense of balance. And the human skeleton is perfectly adapted to make this possible. Movement begins at the hip, a classic ball and socket joint combining strength and mobility. Further down, the knee acts as a hinge, allowing the lower part of the leg to move forwards and backwards. And at the bottom, the ankle and heel tilt the foot downwards for thrust against the ground. Hips, knees, ankles work in perfect harmony, moved by the muscles and controlled by the brain, though at times it does help to have someone pulling the strings. The skeleton has taught us almost everything we know of the evolution of life on Earth. For the skeleton is the body's most enduring element and its permanent record. After death, sinking to the bottom of river, lake, sea or swamp, and transformed over millions of years into rock. Fossils, the only clues we have of our early ancestors. From ammonite to dinosaur, from fish to mammoth, to the primitive humanoids, and so to ourselves. In all air-breathing animals, the lungs need strong protection, yet enough freedom to expand. Hence the ribs, a flexible cage with joints on the front at the breastbone and at the back, anchored on the body's central pillar, the spine. A column made up of a row of linked bones, the vertebrae, from the 9 in a frog to the 400 in some snakes. And running from the tip of the tail, if the animal has one, right up to the twisting and turning joints at the base of the skull. Though from shoulders to head can be some distance. Each vertebra can move only a small amount in relation to the next one, but over the whole length the movements add up to great flexibility. Far more common than a long neck is the extension of the spine in the other direction, the tail, used by many creatures for balance, support, as an extra limb, or just flicking away flies. And in changing from a horizontal support to a vertical column on two legs, the human spine has lost none of its flexibility, at least not in the young and very fit. Bone itself can be pliable. Whalebone has been used for centuries, most notably in corsets, tightening women's waists into tiny circles, sometimes no bigger than a breakfast saucer. Light, certainly, but its lack of elasticity caused circulation problems, fainting fits, even fractures. And occasionally it wasn't just the wearer who collapsed with exhaustion. Bone is a remarkable material, active living tissue with nerves and blood vessels, and a center honeycombed with holes that reduce weight. Some bones have marrow, which produces blood cells, and all store minerals for the body. Indeed, without its minerals, bones can bend like rubber. And when a bone is broken, it has the extraordinary ability to mend itself, although sometimes it does need a little help. But there is another kind of skeleton, not made of bone and not on the inside of the body. The vast majority of animals have an external suit of armor which surrounds and protects the soft boneless body, the exoskeleton. Some exoskeletons have even changed the very shape of the land. Coral reefs and islands are created by billions of tiny marine polyps living together in communities. Each animal makes its own chalky exoskeleton, and as it dies, the skeleton remains, fusing with others to form a growing mass of coral. But the most common form of underwater skeleton is also the most effective. The shell, the simplest shield and a powerful protector. The limpet sticks to a surface with a strength of superglue and hides inside a shell almost as tough as the rock itself. The giant clam's meter-wide shell is the largest in the sea and can close like an impregnable door. People have always been fascinated by the beauty of the shell and have used this simple skeleton for an extraordinary variety of ornament and decoration. The crab, like lobsters, prawns and other crustaceans, has a softer shell and joints covered in tough skin. And those with shells not strong enough to protect them have to hedge their bets. Hermit crabs haul themselves into any abandoned shell they can find for double protection. As they outgrow their adopted home, they must find a larger one to move into. Occasionally the new shell is already occupied, and the crab must fight to evict the sitting tenant. It is this sense of regeneration and growth which has made the shell into a symbol of birth and renewal. Renaissance art depicted Venus arising, newborn from the shell of a scallop. For deep within the shell there is the sense of power and eternity, and always the sound of the sea. Land animals with exoskeletons also need to shed their casing to grow. Here the building material is chitin, hard, flexible and highly adaptable. Some creatures can bend enough to perform surprising feats of self-protection, curling and uncurling by stretching their dorsal segments. The most heavily armoured mammal of all, the armadillo, can do the same, although its armour isn't an exoskeleton but toughened hide. Other animals have even more external protection. Turtles and tortoises have endoskeletons, but with a bony outer shell. They enjoy the best of both worlds, plus enormous strength. The giant tortoise has two bone sections, top and bottom, with the spine fused to the inside of the top dome. As much as 2 meters long, it's an almost impenetrable fortress. All skeletons cover the most vital body parts, and survival depends on the strength of the covering. Yet however strong the shell may be, survival isn't guaranteed. The thrush beats a snail against a stone anvil until the shell breaks. It's not only the shell which needs to be strong. The bird's skull has to withstand these jarring impacts. The woodpecker has taken this to extremes. With a tremendously strong skull and beak, it hammers through the bark of a tree to find insects and can be heard 5 kilometers away. Yet there are skulls which can take far more powerful blows without flinching. The skull of a muskox is reinforced by shock-absorbent bone, which is fortunate since each of these animals weighs nearly half a ton and could smash straight through the brick wall of a house. The skull reveals more about an animal than any other part. Weight, size, shape and position of the organs tell us how well the creature sees and hears, what it hunts and how it survives. The skull is a blueprint of lifestyle. It is perhaps because of the skull's utter necessity to survival that people have turned it to so many uses: cultural, practical and superstitious. Ceremonial drums have been made from the skulls of vanquished warriors of rival tribes. Just as the Norsemen's custom of drinking from their enemies' skulls has led to the Scandinavian drinker's greeting, skål. And with the skull traditionally the seat of the soul, the holy Tibetan lamas drink from ceremonial skull cups, symbol of consuming another's mind. Many 19th century doctors believed in phrenology, the so-called science which taught that a person's character could be read from the shape of their skull, each area governing a part of the personality. Queen Victoria had the skull shapes of all the royal children analysed, and even today people surprised by odd behaviour are sometimes heard to exclaim, "You need your head examined." And some do need their heads examined. Despite its many attributes, the skull is not invincible. A sudden blow to the jaw can shake the brain in its casing, resulting in a knockout. No part of the skull reveals as much about lifestyle as the jaws and teeth. From vegetation-eating animals with jaws that move up and down and sideways, to the rodent's large, sharp front teeth for gnawing, and the strong, thick jaws of the lion with a huge muscle that runs from the front to the back of the skull, giving it the most powerful bite of all animals. Yet the strength of some birds' beaks is just as awesome. The scarlet macaw can crack open rocks to get at vital mineral salts. But the strangest jaws must belong to the snakes, with joints that unhinge and spread to an opening up to 8 times the size of the snake's head. Equivalent to a man swallowing a German shepherd dog whole. and with muscles powerful enough to crush the skull of its prey. The skull is the body's strongest bone structure, protecting the organs of sight, smell, taste and hearing, guarding the vital entry of food and oxygen, and encasing the most complex control center ever known. The eyeballs and the air channel are both well shielded by the bones of the face, while the highly adaptable jawbone helps the 32 teeth chew their way through half a ton of meat and plants each year. But to the human mind, the sight of a skull does represent a threat. No part of the body is so full of mystery. The instant repulsion when coming upon such a clear vision of death is linked to the instinctive urge for survival. Strangely, only the elephant is similarly fascinated by and afraid of its own bones. Perhaps not surprising, since these creatures have been systematically slaughtered and their skulls desecrated for one specialized part, the tusk. Made of ivory, these highly modified teeth serve both as tools and weapons. And not only in elephants. The walrus uses its tusks to dig out food and pull itself along, and even to spear the hull of a boat in anger, or hook them over the sides in an attempt to drag itself on board. The narwhal has only 2 teeth, and in the male, one of them grows into a fearsome 3-meter tusk, almost as long as the animal itself. And 2 of the male Barbaroussa pig's 4 tusks actually grow up through the roof of its mouth. Ivory is the most widely used skeleton material, adapted to every imaginable ornament and artifact. And other specialized bones have caught the imagination of humans. Antlers, emblems of aggression, power and supremacy. Yet antlers do have another, more subtle purpose. They help to control body temperature, radiating excess heat to keep the animal cool. Although we are surrounded by skeletons adapted to every design and use, still
The Eyewitness Museum, created by combining traditional filmmaking techniques with state-of-the-art computer graphics, stripping away the mysteries of nature and science to reveal the essence of each subject, bringing the world into sharp focus. The making of Eyewitness. The distinct visual style of the Eyewitness books is the basis for the programs. They provide the filmmakers with a starting point and a challenge. The challenge of transferring the clarity and superrealism into moving images. Filming those images requires many hours of preparation. Each scene must be visualized and carefully mapped out by the storyboard artist. Many scenes require complex special effects. In Eyewitness Plant, the director wanted to create a 3D figure made entirely of vegetation. How could this be achieved? After the storyboard artist developed the idea, the graphics team got to work. They began with a basic outline of a computer-generated body. This wireframe can then be added to and rendered in any texture and colour desired until the final product blossoms on screen. Over 3 series, Eyewitness has encountered a dazzling array of graphic imagery. None has remained as constant as the Eyewitness Museum itself. The museum's design has continuously evolved. New galleries and features have been added to the basic structure, and gallery displays change constantly. Computer graphics give the program makers freedom to alter and add to the museum in any way, creating a virtual reality storehouse where the real and the impossible share one roof. It is a museum that allows us to see the world as never before. State-of-the-art technology has been used to create many of the series' visual effects, which would otherwise have been impractical to construct. The computer lets designers build the architecture of their dreams and move a camera through it in impossible ways.